I'm a Touhou fan. Touhou is a Japanese bullet hell franchise that I really like. I played the games throughout my high school days. I've played most of the mainline games except Touhou 6, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. I was told about this game and got the general story, but I hadn't played it yet. I was always told it was a terrible way to get into the franchise. Recently, I discovered a Reddit post which had a copy of a modded version of Touhou 6. I downloaded it immediately. In hindsight, this was a terrible idea to download a random file to my new PC, but I was too curious about the game. I launched the exe and got ready to play. I entered the main menu and I saw Reimu, the main character, sitting with the title in Japanese. I was familiar with this since I had seen small clips and images from this game. I selected start and it gave me the option to choose between Reimu and Marissa as usual. Since the Reddit post said this was a modded version, I checked to see if there were any other playable characters, as that's to be expected in mods. But no. It was only Reimu and Marissa, as if I was playing the base version. I decided to go with Marissa Beyond Hard, as I have a lot of experience with bullet hell titles, and the game started. Stage 1 began and it was pretty much easy and uneventful, until the boss appeared. Normally in the videos I've watched with Touhou 6, the stage 1 boss would be Lumia, a little girl with blonde hair, red eyes, a black vest and skirt, and a white blouse with a red tie bordered by 2 large beads around her neck, with a red ofuda tied to the left side of her hair that looks like ribbon, which in lore she cannot touch it or take it off. But Lumia wasn't the same Lumia that I remembered. She had the same clothes except the beads were replaced by little pins. She looked older, with her hair grown out just enough to brush against her shoulders. Her eyes were black with a light glow to them. But what caught my eye was, instead of 1 ofuda being tied like a ribbon, it was 4 ofudas in the shape of a headband. She seemed happy, but in a friendly type of way, instead of childish like many would expect Lumia to be. The dialogue then began. Marissa said, "Only freaks come out at this hour." Lumia replied, "Who are you calling freak?" Marissa quickly responded with, "Nobody's talking about you." Lumia responded with, "Oh, okay, I thought you were talking to someone else." Her name came up as Lumia, the yokai of light. I recognize this name. Lumia was what many fans confused Lumia's name for. So I guess this mod made her as an OC. Marissa and Lumia continued this back and forth dialogue until the boss fight began. Lumia's patterns were pretty difficult to dodge while simultaneously trying to use Marissa's laser attack on the offensive. All the while, Lumia shot small butterfly bullets to try and hit me. It wasn't unmanageable as this is the stage 1 boss after all, but it was satisfying seeing the graze meter go up exponentially during the fight as I dodged her increasingly difficult attacks. Eventually, I won the battle, and Lumia admitted defeat by spell card rules. The next stage was normal. I just needed to blast through everything in Misty like as usual. Surprisingly, it wasn't too hard. In fact, it was easier than stage 1. Besides the strange decrease in difficulty, Marissa was flying through the sky shooting down fairies. Normally, this kind of stage is normal in other games. This kind of stage is normal, but Touhou 6 doesn't have characters flying through the top of the sky other than the first level. That was until I saw a beat up Lumia who asks, "What are you doing here, magician?" Marissa responds, "I feel like there's something you're not telling me." Lumia seems confused, but then the boss fight begins and the patterns are pretty difficult, with most of them being tighter than before, but eventually I won and she flew away. Marissa was able to catch up with her. When she did, I saw Lumia was cut up with some blood dripping out from her injuries. She said, "Please spare my life." And Marissa responded with, "Nah." So I fight her again. This time, her attacks were even more chaotic than before. I was able to beat her by spamming bombs until the fight was over. I took a deep breath and carried on. I got to stage 4 and it was empty. Nobody in sight, not even enemies to fight. After a solid minute, Lumia came back, but she looked worse than ever. Her face was just burnt flesh. Her cuts were even bigger than before. Bits of her clothes and skin were heavily burned. Lumia just said one simple word. End. She didn't try to throw any attacks at all. I decided to instead not fire but wait for the boss timer to end and sim that way. I did so and I was able to just continue to stage 5 like nothing happened. I was able to beat Sakia like you normally would, and afterwards the game ended. Normally the game would only end at this point if you were to play on easy mode, but I clearly remember playing on hard, so I was pretty confused. But it was late, so I closed the game and went to bed. The next morning I decided to go back onto my PC and it was running slowly. It running poorly was weird as this was a new PC. But then I looked into my files and found out my Touhou6.exe file was downloading thousands of text files. No wonder it was running so slow. The files were all named End. I then tried to delete my Touhou6 file, but my PC couldn't load properly with everything being downloaded. Eventually my PC crashed. The motherboard was fried beyond repair. I decided to go back on the Reddit thread, and it had hundreds of downvotes with people saying that it's going to destroy your PC. All of this could have been avoided if I had just waited for others to comment. Well, I know I said I was going to take a break from creepypastas for at least a while, especially since I had just gotten done reading creepypastas all of October on the weekends. So I wanted to take at least a little break from them. But I've been playing in Touhou 6 a good amount on my own time lately, so I figured, you know what? I gotta get a video nice and ready to go. So I loaded up my PC, got to recording some footage. And then once I got the footage, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna read a creepypasta. So I looked up Touhou 6 creepypastas. And this one was quite literally the first one that came up. Now, this story, unlike Dark Square, which kind of somewhat has the same premise in a way, where, you know, it's a mod version of an already existing Touhou game. And the person finds it on like a Reddit thread or something and then just downloads it, plays the game, you know, it starts off normal, and then some things that just don't happen in the game just start happening. It follows it basically just follows Dark Square's premise, except it's just not that good of a story, unfortunately. Reading it at this very start, it showed some promise, and then I kept reading it, and while I was reading it, I'm like, wait a minute, this is familiar. This is just like Dark Square, except a bit more lighthearted. Now, the reason why I say it's not as good as Dark Square is because with Dark Square, like, the game was basically quite literally just Mystic Square, just a mess up version of Mystic Square. The version of Touhou 6 in this story is just, you know, basically a somewhat quote unquote recolored Lumia, but instead of her name starting with R, it's an L, which I can understand because in Japanese, the pronunciation for L just doesn't exist. So, which is why it's Lumia in the official game. Lumia, not Lumia. The L pronunciation just doesn't exist in Japanese. So, yeah. So the name's actually not too far off as it normally would be. However, at the same time, the description of this Lumia character somewhat follows the design of a fan character, X Lumia, where her hair is much longer. It's a longer blonde. But instead of, having the Ofuda like completely removed, the story mentions there being 4 Ofudas in the form of a headband. Now, if you know anything about the fan character X Lumia, she has no Ofuda, and her hair is significantly longer. So Lumia's resemblance kind of reminded me of that at first, but then it was just again a recolored Lumia, which honestly somewhat resembled the design of the fan design of the character Rin Satsuki, who is mentioned within the files of Touhou 6, yet is not a playable character. And quite honestly, that's upsetting because I feel like she would have been a really fun and interesting character. She's already popular as it is, despite her not really even existing. She is still a very popular character. Well, somewhat popular, I should say. And believe it or not, she is actually playable in some fan games. So while she's not exactly forgotten as a character, she's pretty much just an OC, pretty unfortunately. And the reason why I'm mentioning Rin Satsuki is because fans believe that Rin's design would have been Rumia's prototype design. Or Rumia's prototype design was, going to be Rin Satsuki's design, or Lumia is pretty much just replaced Rin Satsuki. So that's the reason why I'm bringing Rin Satsuki up. The character somewhat resembled Rin Satsuki in the fan design. And what's crazy is Lumia is just, excluding Sakuya, is the only real character we really see. We get no mention of Cherno, no mention of Daiusi, no mention of Mei-Ling, Kawakuma, or Patchouli, or Remilia. The only 2 characters we get other than Marissa are Lumia and Sakuya, who and Sakuya only really gets a brief mention, which is just a brief mention saying that boss is same as usual once the main protagonist beat her, the game just ends. Which is what happens if you play on easy. You only get access to stage 6 when playing on normal or hard. But much like Touhou 4 Lotus Land Story, the game locks you out of stage 6 if you're playing on easy. But other than that, Lumia is like, other than Marissa and Sakuya, Lumia is the only character. Which also gives me, like, which also makes it feel like Touhou, like Dark Square. And the reason why I say just reminds me of Dark Square in this aspect is because the last encounter the protagonist has with Lumia just has Lumia just not attack at all, which is something Alice did in the Dark Square creepypasta. Alice was like bruised, beaten, bloodied up, much like Lumia was in stage 4 at that point in the story. Just didn't attack, just wanted to die. Lumia just wanted to die. And yeah, so the story's not exactly like completely original. Like, I could see what the protagonist was trying to do with this story. But it just felt like a copy of Dark Square. And don't get me wrong, and Dark Square was a good story, but this one just felt like a blatant copy. And it's unfortunate because, again, this story showed promise. It just felt a lot like it just felt like I was reading a rehash of Dark Square pretty much. And because of that, like, this story's not bad, but it's not anything to write home about either. But there is another reason why I wanted to read a Touhou 6 creepypasta. I've had an idea for like a video for like the past almost week. I'm not going to say what it is just yet, but just know I do have an idea for a video regarding Touhou 6. And no, it's not like a standard like gameplay video or anything like that. But just know, it is going to require me to do a hefty amount of work in order to be finished. So, yeah, I am going to be working on that video quite a bit while working on other ones as well. But I will get to it. Just not right now. But, yeah, that's another reason why I decided to read a Touhou 6 creepypasta. To prepare myself for that. Now, I'm sure I can find other, like, again, Touhou's not exactly a niche franchise anymore. Like, it's actually quite popular. It's quite popular. And because of that, I could very easily find Touhou creepypastas. And because I could easily find Touhou creepypastas, you'll very likely see a lot more of them in the future. And again, if you have any other ideas like creepypastas you want me to read, feel free to let me know. I'll consider reading it depending on the type of creepypasta it is. And if it's something I have an interest in. But yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching. And please be patient while so I can work on that video for Touhou 6. But until then, take care.